Hi guys, today we are going to think about what is travel and tourism. So by the end of this video you should be able to explain key terms about travel and tourism and explain why travel and tourism has become popular over time. First of all, we need to think about what the words travel and tourism mean. So I'd like you to pause the video and see if you can write down your own definitions for the word travel and the word tourism. Okay. What is travel? So travel is the process of getting from one place to another by some means of transport. So you might be going by bike, by foot, by rail, or even by plane. Many people, just like you, travel from home to work or school by the same means of transport every day of the week. And this travelling on a regular basis is called commuting. And that's not the type of travel that we might think about in terms of travel and tourism. The kind of travel that we would be thinking about is people travelling to take part in leisure activities or to go somewhere where they don't normally go. For example, they might be going to the beach, to a football match, they might be going further afield on holiday. So, travel can be split up into different categories depending on how far people go. And you might have heard of these terms before. We have short haul, medium haul and long haul. And these terms are most commonly used when we're thinking about flights, but we can also talk about them in terms of other journeys as well. So in terms of flights, a short haul flight is unsurprisingly a short flight, and that's a flight that is usually between about 0 and 800 miles. And to make that a little bit more relatable, that might be a flight that's around 4 hours or less. We then have our medium haul flights. These are flights that are between 801 and 2,199 miles. And they're just kind of the flights that fall in between the two categories of short haul and long haul flights. And then we have our long haul flights. These are our flights to destinations that are really far away. So destinations that are over 2,200 miles away. So from the UK, we might be thinking about flying to India or Thailand, the USA or Australia. There are long haul flights. Our short haul flights, we may be thinking about flying to different destinations in Europe. What is tourism then? Tourism is the activity of people temporarily travelling to and staying in places outside their usual environment for leisure, business or other purposes. And I wonder if the definition that you wrote down for tourism would have mainly spoken about leisure. People going on holiday or people visiting a different place to have some fun. But tourism also includes people travelling for business, maybe to go to a different city for a conference or for a meeting, and people travelling for other purposes. For example, going to seek medical care in a different place, going to take part in educational activities, maybe they're going on a field trip, and going to visit family and friends. The important thing that defines tourism though is that it's the activity of people temporarily travelling. That means that people intend to return home at the end of the visit. And the length of the visit can be different lengths. It could be just one night, it could be up to a year. So tourism can also describe activities which people do at the destination which they are visiting. Those activities might include sunbathing, visiting a theme park, taking part in a religious ceremony, or going to a business meeting. So we've now come up with a definition for travel and we've come up with a definition for tourism. And we're going to think now what a tourist is. So a tourist is a person visiting somewhere away from where they normally live or work. So if we think back to the last slide, it could be somebody who's going on a trip for religious purposes, it could be somebody who's going on a trip to visit family or friends, going for a conference, or going somewhere for leisure, for their entertainment. So, tourists can be categorised by thinking about where they have come from. Any tourist coming from another country are known as incoming tourists. And they might also be known as overseas visitors. They have come from somewhere else to the destination. Somebody leaving a country to go elsewhere for a trip are known as outgoing tourists. So if we think about Scotland, a Scottish person or somebody living in Scotland leaving Scotland to go to Spain on holiday is an outgoing tourist. And a domestic tourist is a person who is taking a holiday or visiting a place within the country that they live in. So if you live in Montrose and you head up to Aviemore for the week to go on holiday, you are a domestic tourist. And in the UK, we'd also think about somebody travelling to London from Scotland as a domestic tourist too. So, I'm going to play a quick game of tourist or no tourist. On this screen, I have 5 people and I have written a description of some travelling that they are doing, and you need to work out whether you think they are a tourist or whether they are not a tourist. So you need to pause the screen and you need to write down your answers. You can just write tourist or no tourist, or if you want to give more detail, you can explain why they are a tourist or not a tourist. Okay, hopefully you have come up with your answers. So let's have a look. Number 1 was James. It says James lives in Montrose, he works in Arbroath and drives there every day. Is he a tourist to Arbroath? James is not a tourist to Arbroath. This is because this travelling between Montrose and Arbroath is part of James's daily commute for work. If James was going to Manchester for a meeting, he would be a tourist to Manchester because he doesn't normally work in Manchester, but because James normally works in Arbroath, he is not a tourist. Number 2, Mandy lives in Bern in Switzerland. She is travelling to Paris in France to see the Eiffel Tower. She is a tourist. That is because she is going to somewhere that she does not live, and she is a tourist who is going for leisure purposes. And because she's going to the Eiffel Tower, it suggests she's going on a cultural trip. Stevie lives in Glasgow and is flying to London to take her granny for an operation. Stevie is a tourist. That's because she is travelling to somewhere she doesn't normally go, and she's going for health purposes. Not her own, but her granny's, but she is a health tourist. Okay, Terry lives in Melbourne, Australia. They are travelling to Queenstown in New Zealand to go skiing. Hope you got it right. Terry is a tourist. Terry is taking part in winter tourism because they're going skiing. Last one. Phil lives in Manchester. He is travelling to Mecca in Saudi Arabia to take part in Hajj, a Muslim pilgrimage. Phil is a tourist. He is taking part in religious tourism, and Hajj is one of the biggest religious pilgrimages that people take. So you might hear about Hajj during the travel and tourism course. Alrighty, if we think then about British tourists, we can see that British people make about 60 million visits abroad each year. Now remember, that doesn't mean that there are 60 million people going abroad every year, okay? Because some people might take more than one trip. If you're a business person and you travel across the world to different meetings, you might contribute 25 or 30 of those trips. So British people also take domestic holidays, and they take 52 million domestic holidays every year. They take 13 million long-haul flights. So if we look at the map that's on the screen here, these long-haul flights might be going to the USA, to South America, to central and southern parts of Africa, to Asia and to Australasia. And they also take 47 million short-haul flights. So that's basically just above Africa, where Europe is, where we can't really see any of the map because there are so many short-haul flights occurring. Okay, so we're now going to look at some of the different types of tourism that occur. And on the screen here, I have 4 pictures of some common types of tourism that you might have taken part in. I would like you to pause the video and I would like you to try and name these types of tourism. Okay, hopefully you've come up with 4 answers. Let's have a look then. So top left we have winter tourism. This takes place in mountainous regions or colder regions of the world. For example, it happens in the Alps in Europe or the Cairngorms in Scotland, and colder areas such as Scandinavia, so Norway and Sweden. And this tourism is related to winter sports such as skiing, ice skating, snowboarding and ice climbing. So you might have been to Aviemore skiing. That means that you will have taken part in winter tourism. Top right, we have coastal tourism. Now this is probably the most common type of tourism that you might have taken part in. So coastal tourism involves going to a coastal area and enjoying the coastal region. So going to the beach, going swimming, and maybe taking part in activities such as fishing or kayaking. And often we associate coastal tourism with going for a relaxing holiday. So you might have been to Benidorm in Spain and taken part in coastal tourism. Okay, bottom right, we have cultural tourism. This is when somebody visits an area to go and see the historical sites, to learn about the culture of the area, and to look at the history there. So you might have been to Edinburgh Castle. You might have gone and visited Hadrian's Wall. You might have even been to see the Colosseum, which is the picture that we've got on the board here. And the bottom left picture is of adventure tourism. Now this is a type of tourism that has become more common over the last few years. So it includes going mountain climbing, going trekking, so that's walking for long distances, and doing activities like cycling or kayaking. So it's when you go and you be a little bit more adventurous with your tourism. So there's quite a lot of physical activity involved in adventure tourism. Okay, we're now going to look at some more interesting types of tourism. We've got Tolkien tourism. Now this is part of a wider type of tourism called film tourism. So when a person goes to an area or a place to learn about a film that was filmed there. So Tolkien tourism is focusing on Lord of the Rings, and it's really common in New Zealand because a lot of Lord of the Rings was shot there. And the picture here is of Hobbiton. It's the set of the main town in Lord of the Rings called Hobbiton, and you can go there, you can walk around, you can get your pictures taken with important places that were featured in the film. We've got dark tourism. Now dark tourism focuses on people visiting places like mass suicide spots or castles that have quite a dark history. For example, going to Dracula's castle in Romania. And there's a show about dark tourism on Netflix at the moment if you'd like to find out a little bit more. Drug tourism is popular in countries that have quite lax drug laws, for example in Amsterdam in the Netherlands and in Colombia, where certain drugs are legal that may not be legal in countries like the UK. I am not condoning drug tourism. We've got shark tourism. So this is where you go to a specific part of the world to swim with sharks. So the picture here shows somebody in a shark cage seeing a great white shark, and shark tourism is really common in South Africa, Western Australia and New Zealand, especially for great white sharks. We've got war tourism, so people visiting old war zones, for example Vietnam, or closer to home going to the big cemeteries from World War I and World War II in Europe. Fertility tourism, which has become more popular recently. So this is where somebody might travel to find a sperm donor, and it might also be where somebody travels to have a woman carry their baby, so a surrogate. So Tom Daley, the Olympic diver, him and his partner went over to the USA for surrogacy. This was fertility tourism. So, over the last century, tourism has become much more popular. Looking at the graph here of international tourists by world region, we can see that in 1950 there were maybe 100 or 200 million people travelling out of the whole world to destinations not within their own country. But by 2016 we have over 1.2 billion international tourists a year. And we're going to think about why that has happened. Why are so many more people now travelling abroad? Okay, so the first reason is people have more money. And the fancier term we can use for this is people have greater affluence. So because people have more money than they did in the past, this means that they can spend more on leisure activities, on going on holiday. So people can go on more holidays a year and they can go further away. Maybe before somebody would have travelled to another town in Scotland, but now they're going to travel to Europe or further afield because they have more money to do that. People also have more leisure time. People have more time to go on holiday. In the past, companies weren't required to give everybody a certain entitlement of holiday leave, but now everybody in the UK is entitled to 4 weeks holiday leave a year. If you have more time to go on holiday, you're going to go on holiday more. Our travel links have improved massively. If we look at 100 years ago, it was very uncommon to have a car, but now everybody has a car and so can drive places to go on holiday. We've also had massive improvements in things like rail travel and air travel, which means that people can travel further away easier and faster than ever before. We've had better advertising of holidays. It's now much easier for people to find out about holidays that they can go on because of the internet. And that means that people are getting a bit more adventurous and they're going further away. And lastly, we've had the rise of the package holiday. 50 years ago, if you wanted to go on holiday, you had to book everything separately, and that was quite difficult. You had to go into a travel agent and maybe find out about flights. You had to book every piece of accommodation you were going to use separately, and that meant trying to contact somebody potentially in a different country. And you had to then find out about all your activities and things like that by yourself. But now, package holidays allow people to book in one package their flights, their accommodation, and potentially activities they're going to do as well. And that has made it much, much easier for people to go on holiday. Okay, so to recap, in this video we have looked at key terms about travel and tourism, so key definitions, and we have looked at why travel and tourism has become more popular recently. Thanks!